What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Round Ball Roundup, part of the Sunbelt Syndicate network of shows. It's a very small network, but we are growing. As you can see, Zac is continuing to join us every week. He must like this well enough and interacting with you guys and sharing his expertise on Sunbelt hoops. So before we get rolling too strongly here, Zac, how are you doing so far tonight?
I'm doing fine, man. A lot of basketball lately, so
Yes.
Excited to watch basketball, and there's gonna be a lot more basketball this week, so there'll be quite a bit talked about over the next few weeks.
Yes, there will be. And for those that maybe didn't tune into the football episode yesterday, the background is quite a bit different. The setup is different. Again, it's quite ugly when you really look at it from a bigger picture. But luckily, you guys are just seeing a pretty plain background. But there's a Penn State flag hanging behind me because I am in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, at dear old mom and dad's for Thanksgiving week. Zac, are you going anywhere for Thanksgiving? You staying right there in Conway?
Yeah, I'm staying here because I go back in 2 weeks anyways. So
nice. Okay, so yeah, just instead of a quick turnaround, you're just going to do it later on.
Yeah, I'm gonna thug it out.
Nice. Is it pretty dead and quiet over there around campus right now? Yeah,
it was dead. Like, I think our last day of class was Friday, but like last Thursday, it was pretty empty already.
Interesting. I guess everyone gets out of town. I guess when you can't enjoy the beach as easily with the weather change, then people aren't as apt to stick around and hang out, I guess, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. Well, we got Ben James who said, "What's up, everybody?" And Wolves up. Tyler Austin is ready for some Sunbelt hoops to get after it on the hardwood. This music selection was nice. Yeah, that was one of the ones I could choose from, honestly. There's a small array of them, and we'll just keep it rolling so that you've got something to keep you entertained while we share this around a little bit. And yes, the Penn State flag. I grew up a Penn State fan, so a little bit of Penn State fandom still exists within me. But as you can see, I'm obviously all App Stated out. What hat is that you're wearing there, Zac? That's not a Coastal baseball hat, is it?
It's a Chicago Cubs hat.
Okay. I couldn't tell the colors real well, so I had to ask.
Yeah, I'm not really a fan. I just go to games sometimes, so kind of pick one up.
Very nice. All right, and you continue to go to some more of the games down there in Conway for the Invitational as well?
Yeah, I went to 2 on Sunday, and then I went to all of them on Friday.
Nice. Yeah. Enjoyable? Fun to watch?
Yeah, it definitely gets you tired after being at a basketball arena all day, but better than some other stuff I could be doing.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Keep us entertained a little bit when his stuff's up on the hardwood. Speaking of that, obviously Thanksgiving is this week. And so this is what we're calling our Thanksgiving special. It's not really anything going to be crazy different, but we do have a little bit different setup for you guys tonight. We will talk about each team as a whole first instead of kind of going the way we have been, breaking down the day by day, which included all the games and all the scores. We're kind of going to look at their schedule thus far, not really look into the future, and just kind of talk about what we've seen already, maybe who's standing out. We've obviously got the statistics up on the side there, so you're going to be able to see some of that as we roll along. And again, I usually have a 3-monitor setup. This is a 1-monitor today, so forgive me for a little bit of time that we're going to spend jumping back and forth as we get into everything. But if you can see here, these are the standings as they appear now. No surprise to most people, Arkansas State Red Wolves only sit at 4-1, so there's technically a team with Georgia Southern having 5 victories and a couple other teams with 4 as well. But the winning percentage is what's putting them up at the top. Again, no conference games as of yet. I know, Zac, you're not surprised to see the Red Wolves sitting up there. I know Ben's happy to have the Red Wolves up at the top. Talk about some other teams that may be standing out to you early for either good or bad on the side of, how they're looking so far.
For good, I would say South Alabama. I mean, I know they're getting blown out right now. They're down 41-16, but that's a team that we kind of all thought would be towards the bottom of the Sun Belt this year, with a bunch of pieces from lower division levels that we didn't know how they would fit together, how they would adjust to this higher level competition, and they're doing just fine.
Yeah, definitely surprised me too. I think you and I, did we both have them dead last, or was you just at the bottom? Because I think I had
them. I had them, I think, 12th or 13th in the preseason.
Okay. Yeah, I think you had ULM down there, right, at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking like a pretty smart pick so far. ULM does have 3 victories, but like you said, 2 of those are non-D1 opponents. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll take a closer look at that here in a minute. The one team that I am surprised to see down there at the very bottom is the Cajuns. We did know Katinge was going to be lost for the season before coming in. Obviously, that's a much bigger loss than anyone had intended, because I don't care what you told me about who was hurt. I would have said that they probably could overcome and still have a decent start to the year. It was just going to be how the conference play went. But they now sit at just 1-6 on the season. So a rough start for the Cajuns there. And a lot of other teams are kind of sitting right at or real close to 500 or just above. Talk about your Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, 2-4, 1-1 at home, but 0-3 on the road. Is that something you think is going to continue to happen with some road struggles, or do you think they might be able to kind of flip it around here?
I'm sure eventually they'll get some road wins, but it's kind of just a team where, like we said, they brought in 13 transfers, I think, total, if you include the walk-ons. So a lot of change, and they're kind of just gelling together. I heard one of the women's coaches at a recent game, one of the women's coaches was talking to the people next to me about the men's basketball team. They were like, well, Justin Gray, he wants to implement his system, but like, since he got there so late and he was just trying to get bodies at that point. So maybe these guys don't fit his system 100% of the way. They might only fit his system 75% of the way. So maybe giving him a full year, and next year he'll start getting more of his guys and we'll start seeing more improvement. But I think towards the end of the year, we'll start seeing them perform a lot better, as well as these other teams have new coaches. They'll be better towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. We've seen that in football. We got Tyler Austin giving South a little bit of a hard time, maybe because he's a little bit of a Troy fan, but he doesn't think they're going to be all that great when it comes down to conference play. They'll kind of be mid-tier, which is kind of where we had them, or even towards the bottom of that. So we'll see if that does play out. But again, when we're talking about Tyler's team specifically, the Trojans in football have really rounded it into form. Yes, they did lose to Louisiana this past weekend, but they have looked a lot better as far as the eye test is concerned. And they have had some results here at the end. So, yeah, I believe that you are correct that they will round into form a little bit more towards the end as they get more experience as a team and chemistry gels a little bit further as we go on. So that is kind of a quick look at the standings. Now we'll jump over to that first team that we were talking about. And Tyler said he lives there in Mobile and he's seen them. He says they're nothing special. They just certainly don't look that way tonight. I don't know, Zach, if you've got a better update on the score. Mine's not refreshing on its own for some reason. I've got 38-12 the last I looked at it, Western Hill.
It was 41-12, and now it's 41-22, and South Alabama has the ball 20 seconds left. So going on a little run at the end of that.
Yeah, there you go. Not too bad. I know that some people thought they'd have a little promise. I just didn't know if I trusted in it, and it looks like so far I've been wrong, but we'll see. But speaking back on those Cajuns, so we're going to go in order from bottom to the top of the standings, and then we'll tell you how Zach has his teams ordered after we get through some of this and some of the top guys in the conference thus far as scoring the ball goes. There you see a lot of red, a lot of L's. They're one win over UT Dallas. And we did say that's a D1 team, right, Zach?
I think they're D2.
Oh, okay. So ESPN did them a little bit of respect and put a logo on.
Yeah, they must play a lot of D1 teams.
Yeah. They only saved the important ones there. But here's the one thing that stuck out to me a little bit. You're not seeing one guy consistently get the high point total for him. So it does seem in one regard that they're spreading the ball around a little bit on the offensive side of things, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like they're really leaning on that one guy to take over a game and win them games. Although we can see those last two games there in a row where do you want to take a stab at pronouncing that last name?
El Muta Akil, I think, or something like that.
We're going to have to figure out something.
I'll have to find the pronunciations on the team website.
Yeah, it doesn't roll off the tongue real easily. A nickname needs to be found for him because he looks like he's going to be one of their better players. And look at that game against George Washington specifically there too. High point total, high rebounds, and the most assists on the team. So he did try and take over that game. And they did play George Washington pretty close in that 83-74 loss. But again, not getting the results. Is he one that you have gotten to see play just yet?
No, I haven't watched much Louisiana. I watched a game against UAB, and I thought name's Christian Wright, transferred from Oregon State. He's their point guard. I thought he was pretty solid. And that was a game where they had a pretty solid lead in the second half and just completely blew it towards the end.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a shock. I didn't really know what kind of team UAB had, but yeah, I thought they stood a chance to maybe win that one. UAB blew out somebody before they played Louisiana.
Miss.
Was it Southern Miss? Yeah, that one was the one that shocked me, I guess I should say.
That was one where it started out like 28-0 or something like that.
Yeah, that was insanity. I couldn't believe that one when I saw it. And obviously kind of a regional matchup where they got embarrassed in that one. So unfortunate. They've had some other games that have kind of gotten away from them. I'm very surprised by them, and we'll save that for when we get to them. But yeah, I'd say they just need to have somebody step up more consistently to be that guy. Wright has 2 games where he's been the high point getter. And if he can continue to up his game with, I'll let you pronounce his name one more time.
I'll just say Mustafa because that's his first name.
There you go. Mustafa. I like that. I'll roll with that too. If Mustafa and Wright can get together and really team up to be a great tandem going down the stretch here, not down the stretch, I guess it's still early in the season, but if they can warm up a little bit more before conference play starts, maybe they can start to turn this thing around, but it is pretty ugly thus far this season for them. So that'll wrap it up for the Cajuns, unless you got any last thoughts before we move on to the next team there.
I think they're still trying to figure out lineups a little bit too, because I don't watch many games of them, but I look at the box scores, and there'll be games where somebody will come off the bench and play like 35 minutes and be their leading scorer. And then the next game, they'll play 2 minutes and be like 0 for 2. And then the next game, they'll play 15 minutes and have 10 points. So I still think he's trying to find lineups, but the last 2 games, the lineups have been pretty similar. So he might have found a lineup that Bob might have found a lineup that he likes a little bit more. Yeah,
definitely a little more competitive in those last ones, and a little bit more consistency where the offensive stuff is coming from for the Cajuns in that regard. For ODU, a little bit more consistent on the offensive side of the ball as far as someone who can try and take over a game and win them a game down the stretch in Caesar. That's not really a surprise. We kind of knew he was going to be a name for them coming into the season. And he's been the high point getter in 5 games? Or is it just 4? It's 4. Okay. And then Dura Gordman has been the high point getter in 2. You were impressed with him coming into the season, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a guy that he's been at 3 other schools, and all 3 of those schools he's been a bucket getter. So I thought he'd be a big piece for them this year.
And he seems to have done. He has a pretty well-rounded game when he's grabbing stuff off the glass. There, he's got the high rebounds in 3 of those games. And Caesar again also got some games where he's the high assist getter, which they don't have a ton of because again they're struggling a little bit. They've also got just the record of 2-6. So again, not greatly above the Cajuns in the standings as far as that is concerned. Was the game against? I mean, High Point's supposed to be a pretty decent team. They're, what are they, Big South, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. And Duquesne, you said before we went live, what were you saying about Duquesne in that latest game they just had on last night, actually? That was earlier today, yeah.
Yep. Some people were kind of up in arms because they lost to a team that was 0-6, but that was a team that they just got their coach retired, so they got a new coach. And then they brought in a bunch of transfers and other people like that. So, and I know a lot of college basketball people were a little bit high on them coming into the year. So maybe they were just trying to figure things out in the first 6 games. It just wasn't coming together. But maybe this is the game that Duquesne found something, goes on a little run that proves all these people that thought they were going to be a solid team right.
Yeah, that could be really interesting. It could play a favor later on when they look back and see that, maybe that team was better than what that record had said. And again, that High Point game was a loss, but that was a pretty competitive game there, a 73-67 final in that one that happened, essentially on back-to-back nights there. So they went Monday and Tuesday. That's probably an aspect of that Duquesne game that many maybe aren't taking into
Sunday, Monday,
effect.
Tuesday.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I didn't even look back further than that. You're right. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 3 games in a row. And again, lost all 3. So not doing them any favors to not have some rest days in there. But we'll see if they could continue to build around Mike Jones and the rest of the guys there as the chemistry continues to try and build up in Norfolk. Then, again, the team that we were just talking about a minute ago in the Southern Miss, this was one of my surprise teams. I thought they were going to be really good going into the season, and they are also sitting with just 2 wins, although they haven't played as many games, so they've only got 4 losses compared to ODU, who was sitting at that 6-loss total. They also went back-to-back nights, looking at it here. Montana State, which was a shocker to me. I know Montana State statistically and record-wise was the better team going in, but I thought, I don't really know how a team like Montana State matches up specifically with Southern Miss. At least beforehand, I thought it would probably be a good matchup for Southern Miss in that one, but it doesn't look like it was. Did you get to take any of that one in?
No, I think that game was not streamed.
Not streamed.
A lot of the games since our last episode has not, like, they're either not streamed or on like Flow Hoops or another streaming service that costs more money. So I haven't. And then, of course, I was at the Myrtle Beach Invitational, so I haven't watched many games the last few days.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense there. I guess one thing that I was surprised to see is Corbello hasn't been the point getter that I thought he may be going into the season. I really thought he came in last year a couple times and really took over some games, playing very physical. I think I've talked about it before, but came away like bloody in the face from how hard he was going after rebounds and fighting for stuff. And he's not really standing out.
Well, supposedly Ladner suspended him.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah, Sunday, the Montana State game, he didn't play at all in the second half, and then he didn't play at all against Abilene Christian. And then post-game press conference I saw on Twitter, he said that there's some internal discipline, and they're going to decide the rest of the punishment when they get home to Hattiesburg.
Wow. Jeez. I hope that that's not too much of a issue and it was more of like a, hey, you didn't listen and you went out after curfew type thing, and it's more of a slap in the wrist. But.
Well, since he played in the first half, I assume that it's something that he did either on the bench in that Montana State game or in the locker room at halftime or something like that, or something he said.
Yeah, that won't be as good. That would be worse, I think. So hopefully that can get resolved for the benefit, because Southern Miss needs something to kind of come together and flip the script here for them as well. Again, that's kind of a common theme with these couple of teams here at the bottom. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know who they're going to have stand out for him if he's gone. Maybe, I don't know, I guess Watson and Alvarez can kind of team up, because they've gone back and forth between games, except for, is it Kobe Montgomery? Is that a first name?
Yeah, that's Kobe.
Kobe did get the high point total there against D2 or NAIA Loyola New Orleans.
And then their 7-footer Tegra Ize, he's out for the year with a injury. So yeah.
Do they still
they also have like a D2 transfer, John Wade, that a lot of fans and people were super high on. That the NC, they're having a tough time getting them eligibility issues. So he hasn't been playing either.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's not going to help now when they need all the help they can get. Is the Yat guy?
He started his first game against Abilene Christian. It was the first game that he made. Ladner made some lineup changes. Interesting.
I'd love to see him play. I know he was expected to be on the floor some last year, and then obviously didn't get to touch the floor with the injury that kept him out all year. And I expected him to be a little bit bigger of a role if he could, especially be that shot blocking presence down low. But they're just overall as a team, they're having a really tough time rebounding the ball, because I'll have to pull it up, but
I checked last night, and their team average in rebounds was 28 a game, which is last, and it's not even close. The second to last was Coastal, and they were averaging like almost 36 a game.
Wow. That's crazy. I would not have assumed that ever from this Southern Miss team that has been very.
Oh no, that was Louisiana.
Oh, Louisiana.
That I was thinking of.
Okay.
But I mean, they're still at the bottom, averaging 35 and a half a game. They're at the bottom of the Sun Belt.
Jeez, yeah.
So,
not what I expected to see from them coming in. That's for sure. I'll tell you that. So hopefully they can get going here. All right, your team. You want to take the lead on this one and just talk about what you've seen, who's kind of standing out, which pretty obvious with the name you're seeing there on the points the most often. But what are you seeing out of the shots you either like, dislike, or think's going to really improve as they go along here?
I mean, I like their defense, and that's what Justin Gray prides his team on, is defense. We saw it at Western Carolina. His teams were always by far the best defensive team in their conference, but offensively, he was always mid-pack to the bottom of the pack, and we're seeing that again. Like, they're towards the bottom in offense. I've said multiple times that they need someone to step up and help Rashid Jones out when he has a bad night, because I think we see, like, when he has bad nights, they struggle to score and they really don't have a hope. So, yeah, I'd like to see someone kind of step up and help him out a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense there. Is there anybody that's kind of been close toeing the line to doing that, or has not really been like one guy just yet? It's kind of been like two or three so far.
Well, I think Denzel Hines has been really good. He's transferred from High Point. Didn't play that much at the High Point, but he's starting, and he's averaging, I think, like 10 and 7 or something. So he's been really good, but I don't see him as like that. Put the ball in his hands and let him go get a bucket type of guy. Like, if he's your third or fourth option, I really like it, but I don't know how I feel as of now, him being a number 2 or sometimes even number 1 option.
Makes sense. Okay. I had my eyes on him before the season started, as far as like my preview stuff was going, because of where he came from at High Point, which I thought of as a pretty good basketball school, and thought maybe he didn't see the floor a lot there, but maybe coming into Coastal, where they may need a little bit more help, he would see the floor a little bit more often. So sounds like that's kind of true in a sense, and they'll see if he can round into form even more as Coastal continues along the way there. And, you know, I don't know, just 2 wins, but they've had some tough competition. East Carolina's still really good so far this year, aren't they?
I think they kind of struggled in their tournament, if I'm not mistaken, that they just played in. But I mean, yeah, it's still a solid team.
Yeah. So at East Carolina, at NC State.
That Alabama A&M loss is really bad, though. Yeah,
I was just going to say maybe that's the one you question, because were they winless before that game?
No, they were just. I think they had 3 wins, but they were all against like NAIAs and Division IIIs or whatever. But yeah, it's a bad loss because Alabama A&M ended up losing to IU Indy, and both those teams are. If you look at the net rankings or whatever they're like, the rankings of all 363 teams, both those teams are towards the bottom.
Oof.
So yeah, I know I didn't watch the game, but I know they were up. Coastal was up 10.5, and then they were up, I think, like 15 or so in the second half, and turnovers and just missing shots kind of derailed that.
Yeah, makes sense, and that's a great answer to Ben James's question. He says, "How does Coastal lose to Alabama A&M?"
19 turnovers.
Yeah, that's not going to get it done on the win column, which is a little disappointing there. But it's also hard sometimes for some fans to separate basketball from football too. I don't know how much you have that. You have a better basketball knowledge base and mind than a lot of us. But sometimes when I look at a scoreboard and I'm like, how does small college keep it close with Auburn? It's like basketball is such a different, and we've seen D2 teams beat D1 teams in the past, right? And that shouldn't even be a possibility. And it's just kind of crazy to try and separate some of that stuff sometimes. And
also just basketball, since there's only 13 scholarships and 15 starting next year, but just because there's going to be more talent at the lower levels versus football, where you can get 85 guys on a roster. So, I mean, all the Division I schools are taking all the talent, and then like the D2, D3 teams don't have as much talent, so they're way less likely to win. Versus, I mean, we see it every year. Look at how many guys come from JUCO to the Sun Belt every single year. Like, there's probably at least 2 or 3 per team on average that come from the JUCO ranks to the Sun Belt, and that just shows like there's talent anywhere in especially in basketball compared to a lot of other sports.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. And we're even seeing, on a couple of rosters here specifically, that right off the top of my head, the fastest 2 I can think of is Southern Miss and ULM with international talent, which is an aspect to football that it does exist, but it's very minimal. I mean, you're talking like, when you're talking international for football, you're talking like Canada for some, offensive and defensive linemen for the most part.
Australia for kickers.
Yep, Australian rules kickers that have come over and trained. The other thing that's weird about them is like they come over sometimes and they're damn near 30 years old because they haven't used any eligibility, but they could still come over and play like a year or 2 of football before, they graduate and age out or whatever you call it. So it's just kind of a weird aspect that basketball obviously doesn't have in the same regard there. And Tyler saying good basketball players playing at lower levels have to do with grades and scholarships. Yeah, again, why some of them are at that JUCO route and trying to get back in favor with the school stuff, and obviously get, better statistically on the basketball court to help them end up at a school they really, really want to be with. Where's the poll with name suggestions for the basketball show? Yeah, I was going to try and do that maybe towards the end of this week, because I know a lot of people are traveling right now. So I was going to try and get that in front of more people. Get you thing, but Fast Break Fanatics is the name. It's not bad. I like the ring to that one too. And Tyler's saying Zach is spot on per usual. Yeah, there's a reason why Zach is on this show. He should probably be running the whole damn thing because he's got the knowledge base and talking points to do so. So yeah, then we'll jump over to the Warhawks of ULM. This was one of the teams I took a flyer on saying, man, I think they can really improve. There's just something I feel when I'm looking at how they're combining this team, the chemistry. It's going to have to come together, but I think they could put it together, but obviously not so much, at least not in the early part of the season, as they sit at just 3-5 overall. And since our last show have lost on the road to Northwestern State, 65-63.
They won that game.
Sorry, they won that one. You're right. They won that game 65-63, but then dropped the last one here on Saturday versus North Alabama, 74-62. Let's say, have they gotten blown out in any? I guess the loss at LSU was a pretty big blowout, and then Tulane, it's kind of.
I mean, they were never really close in that Tulane game.
Were they not?
If I remember right. And then that Rice game, it was around like a 10 to 15 point game for most of the game.
Okay, so not really a threat there, even though it doesn't look terrible spread wise. But they've alternated wins and lost their last 4. You do have to mention that one of those is a lesser than D1 team, so you have to take that for what it's worth as well. But maybe you could look at those games against Southeast Louisiana and North Alabama as being pretty competitive, even though they lost those, because those are both within, well, that North Alabama game is a little bit worse, but still within 8 points there in that one. So I don't know. Are you feeling any differently? You're pretty comfortable with ULM being at the bottom where you had them before the season started?
Yeah, I still think they're towards the bottom. They have a couple guys that I really like Watson, Bolden, who is it? Mekhi Willis I like a lot too. Yep. But especially I don't know, especially depth wise, I don't know who else. I like their starting 5, like I said, but depth wise, they're not that great. So I'd still probably consider them towards the bottom of the conference until they start proving me wrong.
That makes sense. I don't disagree with you. Unfortunately, like I said, I wanted to be right on that one. Not necessarily because I'm a fan of it. It just, when you make a prediction, you take a chance on something, you want to look like you kind of know what you're talking about. And not so much with that one thus far. All right. The next team up that we'll take a look at is Texas State. They sit at 4-3, so just over 500, but they are, again, since the last show, on a 2-game win streak with wins over Princeton, which I think is pretty impressive there, and a win over a kind of feisty, scrappy Ohio team. You know what Ohio's record is off the top of your head?
No, I don't.
No.
I think they're around 500, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I knew that they were one of the. I feel like they were one of the better MAC teams last year. Not necessarily one or two, but I thought they were up there a little bit.
Yeah, they're usually towards the top of the MAC, at least recently.
Yeah. So I mean, those two last games, I don't know. Do you think highly of that Princeton win as well, or is Princeton down a little bit this year from what you've seen or read or anything like that?
No, I think that both those last two wins, I was at both those games, and they're both pretty impressive. Princeton has two guys, Caden Pierce, who was the preseason Ivy League Player of the Year, and then Xavier Lee, who are a lot of people consider potential NBA prospects. And they were up big, and then Princeton came back and took a lead late in that game, and Texas State kind of came back and won that game. So, and then the Ohio game, they were in control for a lot of that game. You see Tyrell Pope had 24. That was a career high. And then I thought in the three games total, Caden Gums, their whole offense runs around him. Him getting downhill and making a play, either spreading it out or finishing at the rim. So I think that's a guy when we look towards the end of the year when we're making our all Sunbelt teams, that could be a guy that, especially if Texas State does good, that we consider highly. We think highly of, because like I said, their offense completely runs around him. And then Tyrell Morgan was also really good, just making shots, coming off an injury too.
Yeah, Caden Gum's been really impressive. We're going to see his name again as we get down the road here. So that was a great breakdown of Texas State and where they sit now, where they could go with these latest two wins being pretty impressive there. Yeah, Tyler's saying I'm always trying to find a bright spot somewhere with these Sunbelt teams. Yeah, once conference play starts, I'll probably stop being a little bit I won't be as nice maybe, because then you got to get into why we're all here, which is battling each other. But when they're out of conference teams, man, I want everybody to win them all. I know that's not realistic, but you want
the conference to be as best as possible.
Yes, and we've seen how important that is, right, Zach? Like, yeah, at the end of the year, when you're thinking about bubble teams, last year the Sun Belt didn't have a lot of respect. You had two really good teams at the top. Obviously, Arkansas State came on strong late, and Troy was up there as well. But I don't think there was any real true consideration for like an App State to get into the NCAA tournament because of the strength of schedule for the rest of the Sun Belt. I don't know what you had heard.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Also, I think there would have been a lot more consideration if they were the team to meet JMU in the conference championship game. I think like the year before, 2 years ago as well, I thought Marshall and Southern Miss were both teams that I thought could have made the tournament and that could have made some noise in the tournament, but both of them got picked off super early in the tournament or in the conference tournament, which kind of hurt the hopes of a 2-bid Sun Belt. So yeah, maybe, the non-con definitely affects teams, especially when they look back and they're like, man, you lost to Texas State. They lost to this team and that team in the non-conference. You're like, dang, like maybe that hurts them a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I too many of those weird ones for a few teams. Like App State had those 1 or 2 losses last year. You're like, how did you lose that one?
And then they beat Auburn and beat JMU, and you're like, geez, maybe if you don't lose those 1 or 2 games in the non-conference, maybe you get considered a lot heavier as a first 4 team. Yep,
no doubt about it. Tyler's got a little. I don't call it a dig, I guess, because it's pretty true. But he says like you're like, man, they scored 0 in the paint. But when you look at it, all 5 players were there fighting for the ball. So you got to like that. And see, I do like that because you dumbed it down just like I would, because I don't know all the
I mean, that's how a lot of coaches. That's how a lot of coaches will say it.
Yeah.
It's like you go to a like you see a post-game press conference from a coach and they ask him like, oh, you only had like 10 rebounds or whatever. And the coach is like, man, but we were crashing the boards hard. So I like to hustle. It's like, well, you didn't get the rebound.
Yeah, that I could see that. I could see myself being that little bit of a coach speak. It's a good way to hide when you don't know everything off the top of your head and keep as good of notes as Zach does going into this thing. But let's get into the JMU Dukes. Obviously, the top team from last year went to the NCAA tournament. We've already kind of gone over the history. I like this one for a weird aspect, right? When you're looking at the record. You've got a 4-3. Okay, it doesn't stand out, doesn't blow you away. I think it's funny now, as we get closer to Christmas time. It's like I went to Target earlier today, and it's like Christmas threw up in the damn place. But their win-loss record on ESPN when you go is alternating green-red the whole way down. It's like Christmas on their schedule there. So I just think that's kind of a funny outlier that I don't think any other team in the conference has thus far, where they've literally won the game and then lost the next one and then continued that pattern throughout the rest of the season in this early part. And to note that they did play 3 straight games as well since our last show. And I guess that last one, I can't remember if that last one was done by the time we finished. Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
So we probably already touched on that one, but then they lose to UC San Diego and then rebound once again with a win over Jacksonville State. I know you had some good thoughts about JMU, maybe not being as good record-wise, but being better overall as a team. And obviously that may not happen immediately. But are you kind of concerned here with this start after getting to this point where they're just sitting at 4-3?
No, because we talked about the other games in the previous episodes, but since then, losing to UC San Diego, that's one of the best mid-major teams in the country, and they could easily, if they don't win the conference, they could easily be a team that sneaks into the tournament. And then that Jacksonville State win is big because I think I saw them play Coastal, and they can score the ball. And then we saw them play against Georgia State, and Georgia State had them down bad, and then they came alive in the second half, scoring the ball. So I was really impressed by that win, and I've been really impressed by Bryce Lindsey. I thought Mark Freeman was going to be that go-to guy, and then maybe even Xavier Brown, which he has been a little bit too. But Bryce Lindsey coming off the bench has been really big for him, especially the last 3 or 4 games.
Yeah, his name's definitely popping up a lot there towards the bottom. He had kind of that one outlier against Norfolk State, but he's showing up a lot more there. It's funny that those last 2 games really mirror each other in who was sticking out on the rebounds and assists. And then with the point totals, Lindsey was 17 and Brown with 18 in those consecutive games. Kind of interesting that it was so similar and also similar scoring outputs all the way around. So it's just like they played, a very, very similar game from night to night. It's just, again, like you said, maybe running into that really good UC San Diego team was the reason they didn't take that one over that good of a team. But yeah, I guess you're right. Maybe not too concerned there, even though the record doesn't stand out at this point like it did last year. A team that was down a little bit last year, the Marshall Thundering Herd, sit at just 3-2, so just barely above 500 there. They've played one game. They've played a really small amount of games since the last time we've talked. They've played exactly one. The whole week in between, which was pretty rare for most of the other teams in the conference here. That was 80-45 loss to number 6 Purdue. I'm guessing you're being a little bit of a Purdue. I don't know. You call yourself a Purdue fan, or? Yeah,
I would say so. I grew up in Indiana. I had some family that went to Purdue. Friends go to Purdue. My favorite. I'm a Saints fan just because Drew Brees went to Purdue. So consider myself a Purdue fan, I guess.
Nice. Okay. So was that one, I would assume the number 6 was on TV somewhere, or at least streaming somewhere.
Big Ten Network. Yep.
Okay. So you got to see some of that one?
Yep. I think I watched pretty much the whole game because,
nice.
Yeah, I usually kind of try to stick out Purdue games, especially if they're blowouts, because I know a guy that is a walk-on at Purdue, so see him get on the floor a little bit sometimes.
Very nice. Very nice. So it looks like Martin was the standout there, and obviously didn't have a tremendous game with how good Purdue can be defensively. But he has been a standout so far this season. We'll see his name again later on as well. But was he pretty evident to find on the court for Marshall throughout that game?
I don't think anyone really was. Both their bigs, both Anachilli Killen and Martin, if I weren't mistaken, were both in a decent amount of foul trouble. And then Purdue's athleticism and size just proved to be the difference. You could tell there's a difference between Big Ten and Sunbelt, or at least Purdue and Marshall, because I won't say Big Ten Sunbelt because obviously James Madison beat Michigan State last year and Wisconsin.
Yep.
So, but you could definitely tell that the size, the speed, and the athleticism was much different for Purdue compared to Marshall.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I would say besides an outlier like JMU last year, the Big Ten will typically be well above the Sun Belt historically, as far as basketball is concerned, with what they've been able to
I
pull
think
off.
maybe forever.
Yeah, that one's going to be tough to ever overcome. So I think I'd agree with you on that one. So we'll see. We haven't seen enough, I don't feel like, out of Marshall, but not a terrible start to the year. They just haven't played as many games as a lot of the other teams, so a little bit harder to get an exact read on at this point. Okay, Georgia State Panthers, kind of the same outlook, I guess, because they've only played 6 games. They're sitting at just 500 at 3-3 overall. Their latest 2 games were a win over North Carolina Central, which they struggled mightily at the outset of that game. They were down double digits at least. Was it 20 or more at one point?
I don't think so, but I didn't watch the game. But I kind of checked in on the score every once in a while. But I don't think it ever got that big.
And apparently Tyler's saying he just saw Grand Canyon just beat Stanford. Grand Canyon, like you said earlier, Zach, with UC San Diego, Grand Canyon a big standout when it comes to mid-major basketball here lately. Oh
yeah, I think they're definitely a team that doesn't shock me, especially Stanford being towards the bottom of the ACC. Grand Canyon also has a guy that might be a first-round pick in the NBA, Tyne Grant Foster, so it doesn't really surprise me too much.
Nice. Yeah, that Grand Canyon I feel like university-wise just kind of came out of nowhere. It's just,
have you seen their home atmospheres?
Yeah.
That might be the best home atmosphere in the country. It's up there with some of those like Kansas and some Duke and some of those other schools.
Yeah, it definitely is a raucous crowd. It does look like a lot of fun. To go to a school called Grand Canyon too would be pretty cool. I mean, I went to the Grand Canyon itself when I was a kid. I don't remember it greatly, but I do have some fond memories of it. So to be going to school in an area like that of the country is kind of cool. Ben James said he might be checking out the A-State versus Memphis game. That's a close by one for those two teams, a pretty regional rivalry there. And he says Michigan State also lost to Memphis in the Maui Invitational. How do they lose to Austin Peay? I don't know. Zach, did you get to either watch any of that or keep up with how that game against Austin Peay went?
No, it wasn't streamed, and then like the stats weren't updated on like ESPN or anything until after the game, so I didn't see anything. All I know is the Georgia State social media team has been posting out like their starting 5s every game, like every other school, and I think they've got it wrong the last like 4 games. They've put like the same graphic. It's like they put Malik Ferguson in the starting lineup, and he hasn't started in the last 4 games. He didn't even play today.
Oh, geez.
But it's like, yeah. I did see Justin Archer came back, which is a guy that he came back from injury today. Only played 6 minutes, but good to see him back on the floor.
Yeah, that is good for me too, because like I said, I'm trying to look like I know what the hell I'm talking about here. But McMullen's been a standout for them too so far. So I think he is. Oh, I just had it up.
He's leading the conference in rebounds.
He's leading the conference in rebounds, and I think he's like tied for 11th or 12th nationally in rebounds.
Yeah, he's up there.
Yeah, he's definitely doing very well. So keep an eye out for him when we're getting into conference play here shortly. Appalachian State, the next team up. As you can see, I'm decked out here tonight on stream for this one. Not a hot start to the season. I really wasn't impressed. I didn't think I would be necessarily with what they had lost, the turnover they had there. Maybe they're starting to round into form a little bit in this early part of the season. Since our last 2 games, they've taken out Queens, which was a little maybe closer than I had expected it to be. And then William and Mary, I didn't really know what to make of that game going in, but they get that crazy shot at the buzzer. I guess they didn't need the 3, but they put the dagger in it because what was that? I think there was 0.2 left on the clock when that one dropped.
Yeah, when it went through, I think it was 0.2.
Yeah, so raucous crowd atmosphere. Luckily for them, a lot of people were in town for that JMU football game, and it seemed like a decent amount of them stuck around. I know they've had some attendance issues for basketball, but it looked like almost maybe 3,000 people, like 2,600 or something like that, I think was apparently gone through the door, which again, for anybody in the Mountain region. Sans JMU, for whatever reason, they seem to do really well, attendance-wise, I should say. In ODU, obviously, it doesn't matter if they're good or not. Apparently, they're just going to continue to sell out their arena over there. But, App State, Huntley, and Tate, that's pretty easy to see. Those guys stuck around for a reason. They're the two that are really standing out thus far in the early part of the season. We know that Abrams, had a little bit of injury to start with, but seems to be coming on a little bit better. The only thing I'd say for App, and maybe you share your thoughts on whatever you've seen from them too, is Treadgill, I thought maybe it might be a little bit better from the shooting aspect, and I haven't been completely blown away or really all that impressed with what he's done thus far. Obviously, again, a little bit of chemistry maybe that comes along and he gets better as the season goes on, but I just thought might come in and be a little bit more electric immediately.
Yeah, I haven't caught too many, or I've watched some App State games, but it's not like I'm sitting here like focused on it. It's kind of like in the background as I'm like doing something else. But like you said, when you look in the stats wise, he's not shooting the ball well. But if you look at when he was at Charlotte, he didn't shoot nearly this much as well. So maybe it's just him. This is just him getting more shots up, and hopefully some will fall. But a guy that I thought was going to be a big piece for them coming into the year, Jamil Mutlib, he wasn't that good start of the year. And then I know last game he was really big, especially in that first half. So maybe that's a guy they're starting to bring him off the bench now too. So maybe that's another guy that can be a big scorer for them.
Yeah. And I think, was he the one? Man, maybe you don't know this. I can't know. He's either the one who got the assist on the 3-point play, or he was the one who shot that ball to win that game. Do you know?
I thought it was Tate to Dior Connors. Dior was the one who took Mutlib's starting spot.
Okay. No, I just thought I'd heard his name as one of the ones, but maybe I'm just mistaken.
It was Dior Connors. Okay. Mutlib did have a big game. He was 4 for 7 in 15 minutes. 12 points.
Gotcha.
Off the bench for him. So,
and Tyler mentioning, I didn't know that off the top of my head, but he says it. I can remember the Grand Canyon mascot is the antelope. Yeah, definitely a very cool name that you don't see often enough when it comes to athletics. So, yeah, definitely a cool reason to randomly cheer on the Grand Canyon antelopes if you want to do that there. Okay, 3 straight wins. Or 3 straight seasons of 20 wins here for the Troy Trojans, and off to a pretty good start to this one, 4-2 so far. One of those losses to Oregon. Actually, let's just say both of those losses to teams that are pretty good coming into the year. Number 18 ranked Arkansas kept it somewhat respectable, maybe for what some people had expected. And I know Oregon was undefeated when that game took place. I'm not sure.
They lost today.
Did they lose today? Okay.
I believe so.
So it's an Oregon team that looks pretty good. And again, they had 4 straight road games in that stretch. So now coming back at home, they got they got UTSA, I should say, at home, which I think is a pretty good win. I don't know if, again, this is one of those times when you kind of confuse football with basketball and you're like, yeah, UTSA has been good, but that's been football. And I'm not sure I can think that they've really been all that much of a standout in basketball thus far.
Not recently. They just fired their coach as well and got a new coach, but they definitely have some pieces that can make them really good, especially towards the end of the year. Like we said, with new coaches, it might take a little bit of time. Yeah,
definitely. We've got Connerway sticking out, Fields, Rigsby. You're seeing a lot of those names a bunch. It seems like they've got a very, very solid core. We talked about that coming into the season, about how he's got a very family-like atmosphere there for coach, and that includes his son now, who's on the team. Not sure he's seen a ton of floor time, but his son is there playing with him this season I guess he's a true freshman, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So interesting there for the Trojans and their fans as they continue to roll along pretty nicely, I'd say, for the early part of the season, and look pretty comfortable in getting closer to those 20 wins another time. And Warren is saying time for Troy to take the next step. NCAA. Yeah. With some of these top teams from last year faltering so far to start with, does seem like a year where Troy could take advantage, especially if they reach that 20 win total yet again. Okay, our little surprise team here, South Alabama, didn't start off so hot, just 1-2 to start the year, but have gone on a 3-game stretch of nothing but victories over Mercer, one over Spring Hill, which obviously isn't all that impressive there, but then they get another D1 victory over Incarnate Word on Monday night. They went a week between games, so there was another team there that went a long stretch without playing, but Miles Corey sticking out like a sore thumb in a good way for the Jaguars so far this season, right?
Yeah, I think I said the last episode, if the season ended today, he's probably the Sunbelt Player of the Year. Like, it's a guy that, one of those guys from a lower division level that we didn't know how it was going to pan out, and he's come in and adapted, I guess you can say, more than well.
For sure. I mean, I think right now he's leading the conference in scoring. Again, that's not with any actual conference play, but he is up there, and we will get to him here in a minute. So the Jaguars continue to roll along and make it look easier than I thought that they might.
They're down 9 with 8 minutes left right now.
Okay, so they have cut it further though, so we'll have to see what happens there with that one. So keep us up to date on that one, because again, my screen is not automatically refreshing down here in this dark, dingy basement. But Tyler's saying of the last 3, the only respectable one is Mercer. Yeah, we did talk about Mercer being a really good SoCon team. And speaking of the SoCon, a team that came over with App State from that place within the last few years here, Georgia Southern, one of the more impressive teams thus far this year, sitting at 5-2 right now. Lost to UNC Wilmington, who's been a very good basketball team over the last few years. But then they did trip up to William & Mary, a team that we saw App State get by at the buzzer almost just the other night. They lost that one as a surprise, 102-87. But again, that was the end of 3 straight games for them. And that was the, what was that called? The Rock Hill Classic, right?
Yeah, I think so. It was at Winthrop.
Yeah. And what we had said, none of those games were on ESPN Plus or anything for us, right?
I believe I know what the Winthrop game was, but I don't know about the other 2 because I didn't watch the other 2. But the Winthrop game, I remember watching.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and then they rebound after that one to get that win over West Georgia. Again, a team that everyone seems to get a chance at here in the Sun Belt over there on that east side there. But yeah, impressive. We'll see if they can continue to run it up. And I know you and I had them pretty good standing wise before the season started. We thought they'd kind of be in this general area right now, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was a team that a lot of the preseason polls and the preseason rankings didn't have up towards the top. And I was just generally confused with the way they were playing down the stretch, and then bringing back a bunch of key pieces and then adding a bunch of key pieces as well. So it's not really surprising me that they're up there towards the top of the Sun Belt, but maybe a surprise to a lot of other people. Yeah,
not surprising to me either. I thought they had a chance to do this, and they are taking advantage thus far. Ben is asking where Winthrop is located. Maybe you can help me exactly, Zach, but I think it's a little south of Charlotte in South Carolina.
Yeah, I think it's – I'm not exactly sure where it's at, but I think it's right below the border between South Carolina and North Carolina, up towards Charlotte, up towards that area. It's not like down towards Wilmington.
Yeah.
It's up there towards the Charlotte area. Yeah.
Close to Carowinds theme park, probably, if you know where that is, those that are familiar with the area or not.
4-point game.
4 point? Wow.
Yep.
I'm going to refresh my screen here and see if I can get it. It'll probably tell me it's still an 8-point game or something. Oh, it's telling me it's a 6-point game. See, that's how far behind I was in.
Yeah, they just hit a shot to cut it to 4, and then Western Illinois just called timeout.
Okay. And how much time is left in that?
5:29.
Okay, so plenty of time. Okay. Miles Corey, is he the one that just hit the 3-pointer? Or was that?
Yeah, he hit a 3, but he didn't hit that last 2, I don't think.
Okay, gotcha. That's the last update I see, which is not surprising to see his name, as we said. All right, Arkansas State sitting at 4-1 right now. They're only lost to the number 2 ranked team in the is Alabama still ranked 2? They lost it since that game, haven't they?
Yeah, they lost to Purdue, but I think they're like 9th or 10th.
Okay, so still a top 10 team. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought they looked pretty good in that game overall. I remember taking that one in. I know we've already kind of talked about that. It looks like they've really only played 2 games since we've last spoken. That was over Stephen F. Austin. Is Stephen F. Austin looking as good as they've been lately? Do you know?
I don't think so.
Okay, so a little bit of a drop off there. I know they had a good amount of transfers out. I think Bayburn from App State transferred in from Stephen F. Austin.
Yeah, he did. Mm-hmm.
That okay. So yeah, they may have lost some talent after a good run the last few years for them, and then they had that victory over Lane College. You're not really going to learn anything in that one, but yeah, I think they're well on their way. And did they get? I'm going blank.
Nelson.
Nelson, that's it.
No, he didn't. Yeah, no? He's still not back.
Wow. Okay. Ben is saying Red Wolves played Indiana State, Rice, Hofstra, Bauman Hoops, and Nassau this weekend. Yeah, they've got a large stretch there, which could be impressive if they can get. And guess what? It's on that great Flow Sports. So
I will not be watching.
Nope. Nelson equals a no. Yeah. So unfortunately, not getting him back on the floor just yet. Okay. So this next one, I just was trying to grab some teams or players that stood out nationally. Again, McMullen, really the only one that I found on a quick look for some statistics that would stand out on the national level. So I focused on the teams when I didn't see too many players to do this for. So as far as the rebounds go, Georgia State is leading the Sun Belt with 34, and that's nationally. So that is out of the top 50. They are number 34 right now, and App State comes in not too far behind at 47. I know Coach Kearns had thought that they might fall off from the shot blocking ability and the rebounding that they had last year. It doesn't seem like they're too far off their pace at that point. And again, McMullen is almost the sole reason that Georgia State is up as high as they are, as he is up there high nationally as an individual. And then as opponent rebounds, I was trying to find some better statistic, but the only ones that we had some other teams ranked in was the opponent's rebounds and the teams not allowing others to get to the ball as easily. James Madison is actually a very, very respectable number 7 in the country in doing that, in limiting other teams' rebounds. Texas State comes in at 40, so also respectable. Is this any kind of a surprise? I guess I was surprised to see JMU way up there, since they don't really have anybody individually that seems to be, as high up on the board as, Georgia State does with McMullen.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of not really much thought into these stats. So yeah,
they were, again, I was trying to, I had already started it with the rebounds, and I was like, okay, I'll get some more stuff. Maybe we got somebody who's somewhere in the top 50 for points or 3-pointers. And no, we don't have any teams really sticking out. I mean, I don't remember how much you were aware. I'm sure you were, but JMU was up towards the total point getters last year for a first number of weeks.
Oh yeah. They were putting up like almost 100 a game or something like that.
Yeah, their average was over 100 after the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, and they were number 2 or 3 nationally for most of that. So it was insane, and they're not quite there offensively thus far this season. So again, a little bit weaker on what we're looking at statistically, but again, it does include some Sun Belt teams. So that's why I decided to include that graphic there. And I did want to just touch on, we won't go over much other stats, but did want to touch on the top 3 scores in the conference so far. So over to the left there is number 1 as it sits right now, Miles Corey from South Alabama, sitting at 18.7 points per game. Again, we talked about him earlier. Caden Gums from Texas State sitting at 16.6 points per game. And the guy that you got to see while you watched Purdue take care of business, unfortunately, or fortunately for you, I guess, Zach, but Nate Martin from Marshall coming in at 16.4 points per game thus far this season. So those are your top 3 guys. I guess, I don't know, biggest surprise out of the 3, maybe Caden Gums to me personally. I don't know, you thinking about the same thing there, or maybe Corey's even bigger surprise?
Corey. Yeah. Especially seeing the last 3 games, Texas State, they're seeing how their offense runs is completely around Caden Gums' ability to get downhill and make a play. So, and then he was really good as a freshman last year too. So it doesn't really shock me too much.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, and I know Nate Martin was the one I kind of expected to be up there with what he's capable of and how Marshall can focus in and getting him the ball. So that one's definitely not a surprise to me. So we'll see if those guys can continue their role as we move along here. And that takes us to the last slide of the show, Zach's power rankings. I believe I updated these correctly. So, Zach, you can kind of run down where you've got people or how much movement you had. Either speak about each and every team or you can just highlight what you think is the focal point since we did just go live last Thursday. So probably not a ton of changes, especially for those teams that haven't played so many games since then, I guess.
Yeah, I'll just go briefly over every team real quick. Arkansas State, they beat Lane College. I mean, nothing really to say there. Troy and Georgia Southern both beat West Georgia. So like we said earlier, there's no reason to really move them up or down. James Madison, they played in that little tournament. They beat UIC and Jacksonville State and lost to a really good UC San Diego team. So no reason for me to move them. Texas State, I was really impressed with. That's why I moved them up. They kind of competed with Bradley, who won the Myrtle Beach Invitational, and then they beat Princeton, who was considered the favorite to win the Ivy League at the beginning of the season, and then they beat an Ohio team who maybe not as good as they usually are this year, but the last few years they've been towards the top of the MAC and making tournaments. So was pretty, and then they were shorthanded as well. So I was impressed with Texas State. South Alabama with a commanding win over Spring Hill. Move Southern Miss down because, I mean, 2 blowout losses, South Dakota State, Montana State. Yeah, I mean, 2 good teams, but 2 blowout losses. So
yeah, got to be more competitive to stay where you are at least, right?
Yeah, and then I was impressed. Like I said, I was impressed with Texas State, and South Alabama was solid, and have been solid. And speaking of them, they're down 4 with 2:30 left, and they're at the free throw line.
Oh, nice.
So let's get back. Marshall, I mean, they went on the road to number 6 team in the country, one of the toughest places to play in the country. I mean, I can't say like I expected them to win or anything. So it's, yeah. And there was nothing really below them that I could say like, oh, they need to be dropped.
Makes sense.
Georgia State, 2 wins. Like I said, I do these rankings from Monday to Sundays. That's what I do. So they beat Tacoma Falls at NC Central. We kind of touched briefly about those games earlier.
Yeah.
App State, they beat Queens and William Mary, like we said. Maybe they're finding their footing a little bit with the slow start to the season, kind of putting it all together a little bit. We'll see if it continues. Coastal went 1-1. They played IU Indy on a neutral, and they were up like 20 for most of the game. It kind of got a little close late, but they won by 14. And then, like I said, the Alabama A&M loss is a bad loss, even if it's on the road. That's one of the towards the bottom in terms of net rankings in the country, and they were up at 10 at half. So you can't lose those games. ODU, I moved up. They beat Randolph-Macon, and then they lost to Boston College. I mean, didn't expect them to beat Boston College, but a good win over, I think, Division II Randolph-Macon. And it kind of moved them up just because I thought I think we'll get to in a minute. There's a team below them that deserved to be moved down, obviously. Yeah. But ULM lost to North Alabama by 12, which not a terrible loss, but a game that maybe should have been a little bit more competitive, but it's not terrible. But they beat Northwestern State, which was their first Division I win. So, I mean, yeah, they got a Division I win, and the team below them, Louisiana, does not have a Division I win yet. So that's why they're sitting at the bottom. They got blown out by Rice and Liberty, and then a little close game to George Washington, but still lost. But yeah, 1-6, no Division I win yet. So we'll see. They're obviously missing not just Hosanna, but just size in general, because like I said, they're averaging 29 rebounds a game. The next closest team above them is 35 a game. So, I mean, their starting center is like is Ratliff, who's 6'8" and like 210 or something like that. And
he's a power forward playing center for
yeah, it's just like, I mean, I think we see that with a lot of teams in the Sun Belt where they're kind of going a little small.
Yeah.
I think we see it with South Alabama, who's starting 6'6", 200-pound Barry Dunning at center, or Southern Miss, who was starting D'Anthony Gordon at center, who's like 6'8". Georgia State's starting Caesar Edwards, who's 6'9", 220. Like, so we see a lot of these teams go small, but maybe just, yeah, they don't have a guy who's used to playing center, used to beating and banging down low. And they obviously need some physicality down that post, which I don't know where they're going to get that from, since can't make trades or any of that, sign free agents. So
not yet. Maybe soon.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see if they can figure something out.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, that's a great rundown of the power rankings for you. I don't know. You post yours up. I just share yours around because it's more detailed than mine anyway. I just like to put it in a better graphic that I can fit on screen better for while we're going over this on the show. Are there any, before we wrap up, any big games coming up that you're really looking forward to during this kind of Thanksgiving? It's hard to say break. It's literally just Thanksgiving Day where there's not at least one Sunbelt game going on, and most of them have at least 2 or 3 going those other nights. So is there any that are sticking out to you?
I mean, yeah, I haven't really looked at the Sunbelt schedules for the next week or so, but I know in the chat it was mentioned that Arkansas State plays Indiana State, Rice, and Hofstra. Those are going to be 3 solid games, but obviously I'm not going to be watching because they're on Flow Hoops. But it'll be interesting to see the final scores and maybe listen to a little bit of radio broadcast if they have one, just a little bit, just check in, see what's going on. But yeah, I think those are 3 games that I'm potentially interested in, but I haven't checked many other of the schedules for this week. I know Coastal plays at home against USC Upstate this week, so yeah, that should be a somewhat competitive game.
Yeah, I feel like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, App State played USC Upstate, and I was surprised. I mean, that's a D1 team as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so one of those teams that maybe not a lot of people are familiar for, especially the western side of the conference teams that don't play over here on the East as much or bring teams over from the East. But that seems to be a pretty good school in a number of things. You got a score update on that South Alabama game?
Yeah, it's a 1-point game with 19 seconds left. They just fouled a guy for Western Illinois.
So they're down 1, but
they're down 1. Western Illinois. Oh, they're not in the bonus yet, so they got to foul a few more times. But 1-point game, 19 seconds left.
I'm almost disappointed. We're live right now, so I can't turn that thing on, flip it over. But I guess if it's on ESPN Plus, I can go back and watch it pretty much immediately after it's over, which is the nice.
Well,
part.
They saw it. They just wasted 6 seconds, but they still have 3 more fouls to give. So I don't know what they were doing wasting 6 seconds like that.
Jeez. Maybe they just couldn't get to him, or was it looking?
No,
like
I think it looks like they were just trying to play some defense, trying to get some steals, but it didn't happen.
Wow. That is interesting. Well, we'll leave it on the cliffhanger unless you've got any final thoughts before that one goes live. We can get you off so you can finish watching that one and see who takes it in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've went over everything that I can think of at least. Yeah, I'm kind of invested to see how this one ends, but I mean, yeah, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. And I'm sure we'll talk about it on the next one. So from Zach and myself, happy Thanksgiving to all of you out there. Enjoy your holiday with family and friends. And we will see you back here next week for more Sunbelt Hoops action.